Kevin Durant gave the Nets an ultimatum. He had a meeting with Joe Tsai and told Joe Tsai that if he wants KD to stay, then he has to fire Sean Marks and Steve Nash. Joe Tsai later on Twitter that same day that report was out tweeted that this exact words, "Our front office and coaching staff have my support. We will make decisions in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets," which means KD's most likely getting traded. So, Riv, what are your thoughts on Kevin Durant giving the Nets an ultimatum?
Well, for starters, I like what the GM did. Me personally, I like that he stood on his ground.
The owner.
Pardon me. I like that what the owner did.
Governor's actually what the term the NBA uses.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Did you get that from 2K?
No, they use governor.
Term?
Governor.
Because that's what they use in 2K in the My GM situation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they do. But they don't put the names because obviously it's a money situation. I like what he did. I personally feel like you need to stand on your 10. I feel like if you are the governor of the organization, this is your organization. Like, don't let no man come in there and tell you what the vibe, especially with the way you just lost and with the way you've been orchestrating the organization for the past 2 seasons. We've pretty much gave you damn near everything you wanted, and you went out there and you got swept. I like what he did. I feel like he made the right decision for him and his franchise. At the same time, I understand what Kevin Durant's saying. Steve Nash is terrible. Marks, he ain't that great. You go in there, even though this is the culture you and Kyrie wanted to be in, and you haven't made. I'm not gonna say Kevin Durant on the court, you've given 100%, but I feel like accountability. You haven't looked at Kyrie and said, "Yo, take accountability for the things you've done." You guys haven't really stepped your game up for the past 2-3 seasons. Kevin Durant, I know you've been hurt. Kyrie, you've been in and out of the lineup. Harden was there, and then he got shipped out because of situations with Kyrie. I feel like you don't have any grounds right now, especially by getting swept. But at the same time, you're Kevin Durant. So being that great of a player, you always have that type of leverage. But I think, like you said, I think he's probably gone. I don't know how he's going to be gone because the trade package is going to be enormous for him, and not many teams are really jumping the gun at blowing up their team essentially for Kevin Durant. But I like what the governor did. I really do. I like the fact that he stood on his ground. That's a great word, too. I like the fact that he stood on his ground, and I like what he did. He went in there, he heard his demands, and he said, "This is my organization. I'm going to do what I want to do." So shout out to him for that.
Just call him the owner, bro.
I
like governor. I'm standing on governor.
It's just funny, and every time you say it, I'm going to laugh, but I respect
the NFL doesn't use it, though.
No, they use the term owner.
Who?
The NBA.
Bro, I've heard Silver say governor all the time.
Shout out to Silver.
Yeah, but because they're governing each team, but in ESPN articles, it's like Joe Tsai, owner of Nets.
But that's ESPN.
Yeah, that's
it doesn't matter. You could say either.
I mean, ESPN, Silver.
Let's just say that this is just
Silver clears.
It's
clears.
Oh, in terms of
just
commissioner,
everything.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, he's the greatest. In terms of Kevin Durant, it's just super on brand for him. Kevin Durant has just been incapable of being a true leader to an organization. It's just, unfortunately, the sad truth. You look at it from this lens. I'm with you. Yes, Steve Nash is not the greatest coach. It's not even by any stretch of the means. However, you said it very perfectly. He's asked for this. Kyrie asked for this. Kyrie is also frustrated with Steve Nash, and Kyrie's the one that came out and said, "Yeah, we don't even need a head coach. Some nights I could be the head coach. Some nights Kevin could be the head coach. Some nights Steve could be the head coach." I think they realize now how stupid of a statement that is. Yes, it's Kevin Durant. Yes, you're allowed to say certain things. Unfortunately, this one gets out, and it makes Kevin look a lot. I mean, listen, I've been very active on not supporting Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's my least favorite athlete, but that doesn't take away from the fact that he's an amazing basketball player for sure, and he's earned certain privileges. But in a Brooklyn uniform, he's earned very little in terms of say with the organization because it's only led to one playoff series win. Kevin Durant needs to be better on the court, and with him being as vocal and as dominant as a force of trying to manipulate the franchise and who's running it and who's pulling the strings at the top of putting this team together, how about you get onto the court and show these guys that there's a reason why, one, they brought you in, and two, that you feel the need that your input matters more than the top guys that actually run the organization. Kevin Durant, yes, is an all-world talent. He is one of the best basketball players to ever put on a uniform. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he has done nothing in a Brooklyn Nets uniform in terms that would benefit his legacy. And that's just the unfortunate truth.
Sheesh. We probably laughed about this a couple of years ago when Kyrie and KD went on IG Live, Twitch, whatever it was, and they said, like you mentioned, we don't need a head coach.
Kyrie was literally sitting with his legs crossed, and he had the sage all up in the air.
Yeah, facts, he did.
I remember
It
that,
like 2K
that live, but no, it was live. It was hilarious.
But I think you have to realize now, I mean, I don't know how you don't know this as a basketball player, but if you're going to be a dynasty, if you want to be a great team, you got to have a great coach. There's no dynasty in football or basketball that was, of course they have the players, but you have a great head coach. The Bulls with Phil Jackson, you guys with Kerr, Popovich, and football, Belichick. Excuse me, what? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about here. Spo, is that what we're going with?
No.
Spo's great though.
Exactly. Spo is great.
He's one of the best in the game.
And I think that's something maybe they're finally realizing, right? You're going to need a head coach to do this. And for whatever reason, KD doesn't like Nash, Sean Marks. I don't really think he's done a terrible job in terms of their GM. I mean, if you look at this roster and you have KD and Kyrie, who last year, they were both top 20 or top 10 in possessions using isolation. They were top 20 in usage, right? These are guys that are going to have the ball in their hands a lot, as they should. They're two of the most talented basketball players we've ever seen. But also the team around them that Sean Marks has put around is a great team. You have shooters everywhere with Seth Curry, Joe Harris coming back from injury. You just traded a first-round pick for Royce O'Neal, who shot 40% last year. And you have your guy, Ben Simmons, who last time he was on the court, at the very least, can give you elite defense, and we'll see what else he can give you. But if you're KD,
He didn't say anything wrong.
If you're KD, you have to look at your other options, right? What's the opportunity cost? If you get traded to the Sixers, the Celtics, which seem to be the two most likely options, although I really don't think the Celtics are going to be trading Jaylen Brown, you're going to be giving up. You're gutting the whole roster, right? You're gutting the whole roster. You're going to go to Philly, play with James Harden again. That didn't work out great the first time. Sure, Harden got hurt. But I think if you're KD, you see the team you have currently with all these shooters. Like, I'm sure you would kill for damn near every shooter that the Nets have on this team to be on the Lakers.
I wish
the
we had
role
those
players they
supporting
have,
cast.
the shooters they have. If Ben Simmons could be anything like he was in Philly, this is a Nets team that's going to be able to compete in the East if KD and Kyrie can stay healthy.
I want to just say one thing before you go on your spiel. Kevin Durant is interesting. He has not gotten along with any head coach outside of maybe Scott Brooks. I mean, I think he had problems with Kerr. He had problems with Nash. He wasn't great with Donovan. Kenny Atkinson.
It's situations that he's gone to. The one with Brooks is 100% where he was drafted to that franchise. They put a lot of faith into him. He had a lot to say there because that was his team. The Warriors were not his team. The Nets are supposed to be his team, but again, he hasn't really done anything in a Nets uniform to warrant that.
It's crazy. Floor's yours, buddy.
For one, I disagree with your point about Jaylen Brown. The Celtics already offered Jaylen Brown to the Nets. The Nets just want more.
They're not getting a deal done.
If the Nets can compromise on the package, Jaylen Brown is gone.
They're not going
It's
to.
as simple as that.
They want like 4 first, Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. We're not doing that.
I agree on. I don't think the Celtics are going to give up Marcus Smart or Rob Bull, another player.
I don't know.
But Jaylen Brown, Derek White, 3 firsts.
Not doing that.
The
We
Nets
just went to the
The
finals.
Celtics would do it. They already offered that.
I'm
deal.
saying I'm not doing it.
All right,
And
I'm not saying.
And
I'm
ultimately, I
talking
don't
about
think a
the-
deal
I'm talking
gets
about
done.
the Celtics. I'm talking about Brad Stevens.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it.
Ultimately, a deal I don't think gets done.
Ultimately, I have 2 perspectives on this. The first one is obviously Kevin Durant is an all-time great player, and having him on your team maximizes your championship window to the fullest. You can win a championship with Kevin Durant, with Kyrie, with this Nets roster. So if Joe Tsai cares about winning, then you go the route of firing Steve Nash and Sean Marks. But the only dilemma is that right now, there's no great coach on the open market that you can possibly get outside of Quinn Snyder if he'd be open to joining the Nets. And Sean Marks, who are you going to find to replace a GM like that? I disagree with this notion that Sean Marks is some bad or mediocre GM. Why are we forgetting what he did for the Nets before KD and Kyrie got there? This goes to my second perspective. You can't let players run your franchise. I think Kevin Durant and his team leaked this story because KD wants to get out of Brooklyn. He doesn't want to stay in Brooklyn. He just knows that every single trade talk is stalled for the reason being that the Nets and Sean Marks have already said they are going to take every single asset from the team that trades for Kevin Durant.
Crazy.
And KD knows if that's the case, he's not getting traded. So what does he do? This report comes out. Now KD can't come back to Steve Nash and Sean Marks because now it's a toxic culture. And now you are challenging the owner, Joe Tsai, and saying, you're either going to bow down to me or you're going to trade me, which this lowered his trade value. There's no doubt. That's why I think a deal for Jaylen Brown is now viable.
Do you think
a deal for Brandon Ingram is now viable? I'm talking about just them with a role player and maybe 2-3 picks. That deal can get done now, and Sean Marks won't be so petty about milking every single asset from a team.
Do you think this really brings down his trade value? I think the Nets are still going to stand on what they want and get
I think they
everything.
should stand on what they want.
They should. But I also don't think this
getting
changes
KD
much.
for 4
They-
years.
This is why it's petty. I'm gonna get to why it's petty in a bit. This is second perspective. While Steve Nash isn't good, Jason Kidd also wasn't good in his first stint as a coach. In his first 2 stints, you can say, with the Nets and Milwaukee. Milwaukee, he was better. And now we're looking at him as one of the better coaches in the NBA.
But he got to sit on a bench, be an assistant coach from that perspective.
He wasn't handed Kyrie and KD.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, but also Jason Kidd had that Brooklyn Nets team, the Big Five, that people thought were going to do good.
Yeah.
And he got DUIs.
I'm talking about for Milwaukee purposes, though.
I'm talking about Steve Nash. He can get better as a coach. Right now, he's not a good coach. I don't think he's a good coach. And if it was just Steve Nash, yes, fire him. You can find another coach. But Sean Marks, before KD and Kyrie got there, he was stuck with a team that had no assets, that had no good players, that just traded all their assets away to the Boston Celtics in the Paul Pierce and KG trade because Billy King ruined that roster. What did Sean Marks do? He trades Brook Lopez for D'Angelo Russell. D'Angelo Russell now turns into an all-star player. That team becomes a playoff team. He built a roster that was attractive enough for KD and Kyrie to say, I want to play basketball in Brooklyn. They're building a great culture. Where Sean Marks messed up is that great culture he built with Kenny Atkinson, he then handed over to KD to destroy. Because now the culture is non-existent in Brooklyn. We don't even know what their culture really is. They don't have a set culture. Kevin Durant in Brooklyn, he wanted Kyrie Irving. Obviously, that's a great move in itself. We know that. But he wanted DeAndre Jordan. The reason the Nets gave DeAndre Jordan a 4-year, $40 million contract is because he wanted him. The reason why DeAndre Jordan started over Jared Allen, who then became an all-star in Cleveland right when he got traded there, was because of KD. He wanted Jordan to start over Jared Allen. Who wanted Steve Nash? Kevin Durant wanted Steve Nash. They didn't want Kenny Atkinson. So all these things lead back to Kevin Durant. And the reason why I think Sean Marks has to stop being petty is because I understand it's Kevin Durant, but you also have to understand Kevin Durant is a player that is 33, 34 years old. He's still an elite player, but how elite will he be at the end of his contract? In the 3rd year of his contract, is he still going to be a top 10 player? That's a question mark. There's still injury concerns with Kevin Durant. Like you mentioned, this KD Nets team has won 1 playoff series. Do I think a team of Jaylen Brown, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons can win you a playoff series? I do. You're in the same position you are now if you trade KD for an all-star level player like Brandon Ingram or Jaylen Brown. And on top of that, you're not just getting them. You're going to get a good role player in return. From the Pelicans, it could be Brandon Ingram, a Herb Jones, or a Jose Alvarado, or one of those guys, or a Trey Murphy. From Boston, a Derek White with Jaylen Brown, a couple picks. Now you have assets for the future. Now you have an all-star in Jaylen Brown. Now you have a good role player in Derek White. And this roster can compete for a playoff spot. But Sean Marks is hell-bent on getting every single asset, and no team is going to trade for Kevin Durant if that's the case. Ultimately, I think the Nets will fold. Sean Marks will trade Kevin Durant, and it's going to be to the Boston Celtics, and they're going to get Jaylen Brown. That's what's going to happen.